Australia, among others, will become a huge market for international drug companies.
The 90s are certainly the decade of the brain, and I think that the mind pills are clearly coming whether we like them or not.
Will you be taking smart pills? Food for thought. 9:30 Thursday, ABC.
Tonight, like Alice through the looking glass, we enter the new and intriguing world of virtual reality. And in the real world, the challenge of protecting our native forests. Hello and welcome to Quantum. Also tonight, one of the big problems for premature babies is simply being able to breathe. Now it seems the humble lizard has something to teach us about how our lungs function, which will ultimately save lives. But first, to a world where the human mind and computers interact as never before. Here's Andrew Waterworth.
Hi, Quantum Man here, superhero of science. You ever wanted to walk through a wall? Or fly through the air? Once there was a time when flying like this was something you only did in your dreams or saw at the movies. The appeal of superheroes like Quantum Man is that we're not constrained by the limitations of the human body or by the laws of physics. Of course, this is all really a trick. I'm not flying at all. Instead, I'm kneeling here feeling like a right dork. But now there is a way everyone can act out their childhood fantasies. Welcome to the brave new world of virtual reality. By wearing the latest in chic computer accessories, a matching glove and headset, you can climb through a computer monitor and, like Alice through the looking glass, become part of another world.
These are the bones of a real person whose hand was scanned in a magnetic resonance machine. I'm passing my bone fingers through the photograph now. This is a real museum and a real exhibit that was set up in Germany. Here we have a virtual television. I can put my hand into the screen, and I can furthermore go inside the screen myself and look back at it from the inside.
But what can virtual reality offer that television, the movies, even real reality can't?
The human being actually has to be active in the world in order to sense it. Television is about as far as you can push, or the movies are about as far as you can push this notion of providing experience without demanding any participation.
I first entered virtual reality in California, in the laboratories of Jaron Lenier's VPL company, on the shores of San Francisco Bay. Outside, it was a typical Californian day, sunny side up. Inside, it was another story. I slipped into something comfortable, a Lycra data glove. Slender optic fibers running along the outside flexed when I did, creating a phantom hand for reaching into the computer's data banks.
You point in the direction that you want to fly, so you point your hand like a little kid with a gun, and then when you want to start moving, you just bend your thumb down, and that starts you moving in the direction you're pointing.
So far, so good.
Help you on with the
Now
iPhone
something
here.
not quite so comfortable, the iPhone.
So you can grab those earphones.
Complete with two tiny color TV screens, the iPhone feeds me stereo images, which change as I turn to view different perspectives of the imaginary world. A position sensor on the top and another on the glove tell the computer where I am in space. Now, with my 3D goggles and headphones to match, I'm ready to dive headfirst into the data bank.
Now her head disappears and you get a better view of her brain.
Suddenly, cyberspace. There I was, travelling along someone's optic nerve, taking a trip down memory lane. Except this was a place I'd never visited before.
Ooh, it's all happening. Lights flashing.
I'm just thinking this brain is a little short on detail when whammo, I run right into a synapse.
So can I go in and have a look at that?
Sure, just point your hand at it.
I lurch into the synaptic space and find myself caught up in the passing traffic of chemical messengers.
So I try and reach out with my hand.
But instead of getting in the way, I can become part of the scene and even move the molecules about. This has its advantages.
Well, perhaps, maybe if I try and grab the one down below.
Thanks to virtual reality, I can grapple with someone else's neurotransmitters without doing any harm.
Hey, I've got it.
You got it.
Virtual reality allows us to become movers and shapers in these synthetic worlds. Quite simply, we can manipulate the data inside a computer the way a sculptor manipulates clay.
Right.
This promises to revolutionize the real worlds of everything from architecture to pharmacology.
For instance, in chemistry, it's possible to simply build large-scale grabbable models of molecules and attempt to shove them together in order to have a very concrete experiential understanding of how they bind.
Humans operate most efficiently in 3 dimensions. We touch, see, hear and move. With virtual reality, we have the opportunity to translate difficult facts and figures into interesting 3-dimensional worlds that we can more easily come to grips with.
If virtual reality will allow us to explore complex worlds of computer data in the same way as we explore cities, why limit ourselves to earthly pursuits? Why not go somewhere really different, like Mars?
This is not a virtual experience, rather a supercomputer animation, built up from a mass of real information gathered by unmanned spacecraft. There is too much detail here for virtual reality systems to handle in real time. But it's towards this level of realism which VR is heading. At NASA's Ames Research Center in California, work is underway to bring not only the planets, but the extravagant claims of virtual reality down to Earth. Armchair space travel might be just around the corner. Here, I'm looking at the same valley on Mars in virtual reality. Not as realistic, but still impressive.
The data you're looking at right now is data that was returned from the Viking satellites in 1976 and 77. In the future, it could be data that was returned earlier that day or a couple days ago by another future spacecraft or a rover vehicle that might be on the surface of
The
Mars.
image is crude and jerky because every time I move my head, the computer has to recalculate more than 500,000 polygons for each eye. But the advantage over the animation is that I can go anywhere I want, when I want, and without getting out of my seat.
Well, I think virtual reality will play a very significant role in planetary exploration, and the example I would cite is the current Magellan mission to Venus. The only way to explore Venus is virtually. If you were in orbit with a camera, you could not see the surface. If you landed with the camera, you'd melt. And so essentially the only way to explore it is to digitize it, send that planetary data back to Earth, and then view it as a virtual reality.
Virtual reality will not only give us access to the planets, it'll also help design our robotic scouts, vehicles like the mobile and dexterous Mars rover. The challenge here is to make a robot which explores like a human.
You see the white, and I can see around the vesicles. That's a sure sign.
The first step is to find out how a real geoscientist would go about the job. McGreevy took geologists into the Mojave Desert in California, fitting them with headsets which simulate the VR experience.
Right here.
Not surprisingly, the scientists rely heavily on a wide field of vision and a sense of touch and hearing to interpret their surroundings. NASA will have to build a rover which senses the environment in a similar way, if Mars is to be explored realistically from Earth.
I cannot judge. I'm sure that with this thing off, I could step across that without any trouble. Okay, here we go.
I'm control-enabled.
Of course, virtual reality can be more than a design aid for robots. You can virtually control them as well.
And I'm controlling the end effector of the robot.
This is part of NASA's experimentation with telerobotics. Here, Rick Jacoby is taking over the mind of a robotic arm.
Magic robot go over a table. Done.
And the robot will go to these predefined positions.
Controlling a robot arm could make tasks such as assembling space stations or fixing satellites easier, safer, and cheaper. Virtual reality is no longer science fiction. The technology is already with us, promising us not just the world, but an infinite variety of them.
Hi, Tony.
But if television has already come to dominate our consciousness, isn't there a danger of getting lost or even hijacked in the virtual world?
Oh, this is lucky. There's the March Hare himself.
The only reason virtual reality is real in the first place is that it's interactive. And the moment that you remove the power of the person to be in charge of their own experience, then at that very moment you lose the magic of virtual reality.
When you tip me over, tea comes out. So tip me over and pour me out.